You're listening to the Chopped Podcast, episode number 60. Hey everyone, I'm Marley of the blog Namely Marley. Thanks for joining me today for the 60th episode of the Chopped Podcast. You know, this is the podcast designed for people just like you, bloggers who love food. Wow. Well, here we are, episode 60. That means I've interviewed over 60 awesome food bloggers, creative entrepreneurs, or people who have expertise related to being an online creative. I've received emails from so many of you as well, and I'm so grateful for each and every one of you. I have learned so much from all the people I've interviewed, from you all, from going to conferences and meeting other creative entrepreneurs, and also from the work I've done with my life coach, Jay Pryor. You can listen to him. I interviewed him in episode 48, so go back and take a listen to him. I want to share with you something that I consider to be probably the most important thing that I've learned that I think is central to being a creative entrepreneur. And it's the idea of finding gratitude. So, you know, I'm a big fan of meditation. I do it almost every day now, and I have several resources that I use for this meditation. I talked about them in previous episodes as well. And recently I discovered some meditation series offered by Deepak Chopra. And in one of his meditation sessions, he talks about focusing on gratitude as a way of quieting the ego. I never really looked at it that way before. I know lots of people talk about how important it is to have gratitude, and I practice that as a result. And I find that gratitude is really helpful, and I really love, incorporating it more into my life. But I never really thought of it as like the little mouse that kills the big bad snake before. So let's first talk about ego and what that is, because I had to actually look it up myself and to kind of refresh it in my memory. What is the technical definition of ego? And the ego is how we view ourselves, but it's not really our true selves. The ego oftentimes includes a lot of labels, masks, and judgments on ourselves. So oftentimes I think that's why we hear people refer to it as the inner critic. On the opposite spectrum of that, we have our true self. This is the part of us that is open to possibilities. It's creative and it's powerful. It's authenticity. And you know me, I love the topic of authenticity. It's like nirvana to me. So here's why I think ego and entrepreneurship can be kind of tricky. Because one of the things I think we find very intriguing as entrepreneurs is also the thing that can be the biggest challenge. Okay, so follow me a little bit here. As food bloggers, we're creating our own adventure. We're designing, building, and captaining our own ships. Ahoy, mates. We are going after big ideas. If you dream up an ebook, you can go for it. There are opportunities today like there have never been before because, we can actually dream up these ideas, and there's technology and software and tools and ways to actually make those happen and publish them, and it's really exciting. The problem is when we start letting our blogs define us. So for example, if we start establishing some success with our blogs and we start to feel really good, but then only for a moment, right? Because someone else is more successful. They have more followers on Pinterest, or they have more followers on Instagram or whatever. They get more traffic. They're getting more sponsored posts. All of these things can start to make us feel kind of down because someone else is more successful. Listen, here's the thing. Someone is always going to be more successful. It's like the way of the world, right? It's always going to be a thing. And that can turn into a tricky kind of miserable mess if we're not really careful. Because think about it. If the blog defines us when things are going well, then what defines us when things are not going so well? If traffic starts to take a dive, how do we define ourselves around that? Does that mean we're a failure? And if it's not the traffic, then it can also be social media followers, like I said before. Maybe my photos look great on Instagram, so why don't I have as many followers as she has? What am I doing wrong? Why am I such a loser? Do you hear that? It's like we feel like we are in every part of our venture, from idea to execution. It starts to define us just like we feel like we define it. So I think it's easy as an entrepreneur to get stuck in this area of letting these external metrics define us. It's the ego inside that starts creating this worry and anxiety and suffering. I don't have enough followers. I'm never going to make this work. I'm not good enough. That's the voice of our ego speaking. But we have to go beyond the ego to find our true selves. And there are several ways to get our ego out of the way. But as an entrepreneur, I think we also need a little bit of that ego. It kind of helps push us forward in some ways. So we have to find a dance, I think. And this is something I found that really works for me. So I'm going to share it with you. Gratitude. It's huge. Rather than thinking, why do I only have 1,500 followers on Instagram? What am I doing wrong? Flip that and say, I have gratitude for each and every one of my followers. And I ask myself, what can I do to better serve them with my posts? It doesn't mean I don't try tips and ideas that I learned from others to grow my Instagram account, but it does mean I approach it from an attitude of gratitude. I'm working to find ways to be grateful each and every day. If one person comments on a post today, I don't think, oh no, only one comment. I celebrate the one comment. So last year at Chopped Conference, my life coach Jay gave me this great idea and I loved it. I created a board that I kept next to my desk, and every time someone bought a ticket, I wrote their name on the board and then I expressed my gratitude for them. And guess what? I made my goal of selling 100 tickets at the conference. I'm definitely going to be doing that again this year because it can switch my mindset from being anxious, like, are we not going to sell enough tickets? Are we not doing this right? Are we not doing that right? To I am so grateful for each and every person who comes to the conference and how can I best serve them? I have another trick for finding gratitude as an entrepreneur. If you struggle finding gratitude, like I do some days, look at your life from your 18-year-old self. My 18-year-old self didn't have very much. We were kind of poor and, we just didn't have a lot of things going on financially, but I had a lot of dreams. She would be so wowed by my present day self. She would love my house. She would love the fact that I shop at the beautiful Costco store. She would love that I have short hair. She would love that I'm playing tennis, that I'm doing my own thing online, that I'm working with food. She would love all of this. Also, my 18-year-old self was so motivated. I would get up in the middle of the night and clean my room just because. I don't even get that now, but I would go running in the afternoon. I would get to workouts whenever I could. I was just so inspired and motivated. Sometimes I need an infusion of that in my life. So I connect with her on those moments when I need that. Like I say, I just look at my life from the perspective of my 18-year-old and I just look around and I feel so inspired. So I love this quote I read in the book, The Dance of the Dissident Daughter. It's by Sue Monk Kidd. She's actually quoting Carl Jung here, but anyway, I think you'll get the point. Every mother contains her daughter in herself, and every daughter her mother, and every mother extends backwards into her mother and forwards into her daughter. Oh, wow, I love this. And the idea that we can mother ourselves from the past and future. In other words, I can go back in my mind and be a parent to my inner child, sure, but also I can draw from those earlier versions of myself to daughter myself as well. I hope that makes sense. It makes sense to me, so I'm hoping it makes sense to you as well. I also have a gratitude journal. I talked with you about this before, but recently I've started doing something along the opposite because sometimes to have more gratitude, we have to give up on bitterness. So my mom said this to me recently. Hi, Mom. My mom said, bitterness is a weed that has deep roots. That means we have to be careful and diligent when we pull those weeds out of the garden, because sometimes you have to keep pulling at the weeds and you have to try to get to the root of it. So each night as I'm dozing off in bed, I forgive my day. I forgive someone who may have said something I interpreted negatively. I forgive the person who forgot to respond to my email. I forgive my husband if he said something that made me mad. I forgive myself too. If I said or did something stupid, or if I didn't do something that was on my to-do list, or, if I wasn't perfect like I think I have to be, I forgive myself. And it has really helped me to create a more, like a nice level playing ground for my gratitude to build on. So how can you use this information? Find ways to be grateful. If you have 300 people who come to your site every month, be grateful for each and every one of them. As Ali Ebright said in an earlier episode of this podcast, if you have 300 people in a room and you were giving a talk to them, couldn't you imagine that you'd be so nervous? I would be to speak in front of 300 people. That's crazy. So don't think of your site in terms of comparison to others. Be grateful for the people coming to your site today. And if you're having trouble being grateful, then flip the story a little. If you want more traffic, recognize that your position of wanting is making the way things are wrong. That's a negative approach. The giving up of making things wrong kind of releases anxiety and opens up a whole new world of opportunities. So once you find more and more ways of being grateful and releasing being wrong, you're going to be so surprised by the opportunities that can come open to you. Okay, so here's another quote from that same book. It's by Sue Kidd from her book, Dance of the Dissident Daughter. We grow fertile with new words, new ideas, new consciousness, new lyricism, new energy. Our journey deposits psychological or spiritual energy, she has in parentheses here, empowerment, into our internal banks. And that, to me, is the best thing of all about being grateful for today. I'm also so grateful for you. So thanks so much for coming along this journey with me. I appreciate your emails, your shout outs on social media, your comments about the podcast. I love it all. Thank you so much. We have more great interviews coming soon, and I can't wait to share them with you. Next week, I'm talking with Jen Herman, who is a social media guru. She and I are going to talk about tips on using Instagram for entrepreneurs, and I know you're going to love this interview. It's full of great tips. If you'd like to see the show notes page for today's show, or if you'd like to sign up for our weekly email newsletter to get tips on food blogging, head over to choppedpodcast.com. You know you inspire me, so I hope this podcast is an inspiration to you as well. Thanks for listening and have a great week.